I am joined by Jayne Moorby, and you've got lots of hats. You're the chair of the Cumbria Cornerstone Employers uh, Careers Hub. You've also the marketing manager for Oxley, and you do school outreaches. But you attended COP26 a couple of weeks ago, and we're still sort of talking about that. And I think that this is going to be a discussion for quite a long time. You went to a sort of a big Northwest discussion, didn't you, about young people? What sort of was covered in this?
Yeah, that's right. It was a session with leaders of the five areas in the Northwest. And it was to talk about how do we empower young people to drive the green revolution. And the theme was about that young people are really interested in climate change. They're really aware. Look at what's happened with Greta Thunberg, and young people are really driving this movement. So it was about how do we empower them to be able to do that and be successful in creating change.
One of the things that's come out in the news in the last few weeks is that young people are experiencing actually quite a high climate anxiety, environmental anxiety. But this was about empowering them. So how do you take that sort of worry and fear, and they hear the headlines, but maybe they don't understand them? How do you take them from that place and get them to a sense of power and being able to sort of be a part of the changes?
So I think the really important way to do that is to give them confidence and resilience. It's those life skills that they need that will enable them to be able to be campaigners and to take the message forward. So it's programs like, we do a number of these programs in the local area. We do a program called Building My Skills that we deliver into a lot of Barrow schools. And that's all around building confidence and resilience. We do a program called Bright Stars that helps young people take a topic and campaign. And we do Furness Future Leaders Academy in this area, which is all about finding young people that have that drive and enthusiasm and want to make a difference. And again, really focusing on giving them the skill set to be able to make some of these things happen. And once a young person has got the belief that they can change the world, then, they'll go out and do it.
Well, when we're sort of coaching young people or something, I always go to my son, what do you want to be when you grow up? My father does the same thing and he's 68. What do you want to be? Or what should I be? How do we get them sort of thinking about these careers that maybe don't even exist yet? If you're talking to somebody who's maybe looking at apprenticeships now, what should they be thinking about?
Well, in this area, we're obviously very tuned into clean energy. We've got Sellafield in Cumbria, and we've also got Britain's biggest offshore wind farm based right here. So there are lots of opportunities in clean energy for young people in this area, and I think lots of young people don't understand about the vast amount of roles that are available to them. And it's our job as role models in the community and people who work with schools and work in businesses to make sure that young people have their eyes open to all of the opportunities that are available. And as you said, some of these roles don't even exist yet. We don't even know what they're going to be. So it's really important for young people to have transferable skills that will enable them to be able to pivot into these roles as they become available.
Well, one of the things that we have a problem with here is that young people think they have to leave. They have to leave Cumbria. They have to leave sort of the Barrow area, the Ulverston area, to have opportunities to be able to get an education and experience. But it sounds like what you're saying is that actually, particularly within green energy, that those opportunities are right here. And that's quite exciting for young people to think, actually, I have a future. I can build a career in South Cumbria. Whereas, in the past, we haven't really looked at it that way. I want to talk a little bit more about the responsibilities and opportunities, not just for young people, but for businesses in our area. So we're going to take a quick break, listen to some songs, and then we'll be back to sort of look at those sort of opportunities. So I've been speaking with Jayne Moorby, and she wears lots of hats, but she went to COP26, and there was actually a Cumbria discussion there. What kind of things were covered during that talk?
During that discussion, we were talking about the challenge of decarbonisation in Cumbria. And we have a vast number of small and medium-sized businesses in the county. And a lot of those businesses have got a real desire to change and to decarbonise, but they don't know where to start. So we were having a discussion around how do we create a framework to enable small businesses to understand decarbonisation better, to understand who the partners are that they should be working with, what small steps they can take to make a big difference, and how they take the first step on the journey.
One of the things that sort of comes up over and over again is the sort of, it's quite heavy, that responsibility. And I think that that's, particularly if you're a small business owner, it kind of can feel like that's being placed, like from top down, that's being placed on you. But is there a way that we can look at this as opportunities for growth, opportunities for maybe cutting down costs or, opening up to new markets? Do you think that that's available for small and medium-sized businesses?
It's absolutely available. In Cumbria, we have a lower rate of productivity than the rest of the UK. And the rest of the UK already has a lower rate of productivity than some of the other countries in Europe. So if we can tackle productivity, we have an opportunity to grow our businesses and be more profitable. And the way to tackle productivity is through digitalisation. So we need to look at where we can put in AI technology, sensor technology, how we can use data better to understand our businesses, and all of these activities reduce energy use. So there's a massive opportunity there for organisations to reduce cost and to grow if they look at adopting digitalisation as a way of dealing with energy use. And alongside that, there are huge opportunities in this area for people, for careers and supply chain opportunities in green energy, particularly in areas like offshore wind. And small businesses that might have worked for a long time in supply chains like defence or in heavy engineering need to look at where they can get opportunities to be working in clean energy. And young people who are looking at careers will have the opportunity maybe in Barrow to study with the University of Cumbria in the new campus that's due to be opening in Barrow. So there'll be opportunities for people to get involved with innovation, and innovation's really linked into this area. So intrinsically, if we can all innovate better and do things smarter, we've got a massive opportunity.
It seems like one of the things that's necessary is to have creative thinking, to sort of open up your mind and to look for possibilities. And some of them are maybe short term and some of them might be long term. I know that specifically Oxley, who you work with, is looking towards sort of 2040, which right now seems like a really far away, but actually it's going to come up very quickly. So I think that that's sort of an exciting challenge. It's a challenge, but an exciting challenge to sort of think creatively about, and personally as individuals, but also in sort of the business sector. I really want to talk about that future, though, and sort of how we think about what's going to happen next and implement those policies today. So we're going to have a quick break, and I will be back with Jayne in just a moment to talk about sort of how we think about the future. Jayne Moorby from Oxley Group has been talking to me about sort of all these environmental issues, whether we're talking about the Northwest, if we're talking about just Cumbria and local businesses. But I really want to think about sort of bigger, because the government set sort of targets. They've set sort of recommendations, but there isn't a lot of policy. There's not a lot of legislation about this. So it seems like it might be that different businesses have different targets, and some might be more, I guess I want to say, sort of more initiative involved in those targets. So how do you do that within Oxley? Finding that balance between being able to do what you do, but also thinking ahead, sort of future business plans.
So that's a really difficult challenge, I think, for small businesses, because the first thing you've got to do is measure where you're at in terms of your carbon footprint. And that is difficult to do because there's lots of different models and different ways of doing it. And it's really hard to know how far to go. If somebody travels to your site, is that included in your carbon footprint? Do the products you make include in your carbon footprint? So that's the first challenge. And then we've looked at the big things that we can do. And there are a few big changes we can make as a business, but that requires investment. And it's difficult at the moment for businesses to invest because we've coming out of COVID recovery and there isn't a lot of cash around in the business world. So it's difficult to make investment. But alongside that, there are lots and lots of small incremental changes that we can make, and they add up to a big whole themselves. So we have a green team here at Oxley. That's 10 people from around the business. And we ask them for ideas. When we talked earlier about creative thinking, it's about them coming to us with ideas of how they can make small changes that will have an impact. For example, getting a shower installed so that people can cycle to work, putting a water cooler into all areas of the factory so people don't bring plastic bottles on site. So that's one of the ways that we tackle the challenges. But the other benefit that has is that it raises awareness and it makes everybody in the business know that they're part of this journey as well. This isn't something that the management team are doing. Everybody in the business is part of the journey, and everybody has a responsibility, both within the business and within their own lives, to make changes.
Well, as an individual and a consumer, how do I find out what a company's policy is, and how can I trust what they say? Because if, for example, my big grocery store shop, if I'm going to choose where I'm going to shop, how am I supposed to know which one is sort of more green, more environmentally friendly, and making those choices? Because I think that as an individual, it's very hard for me to be able to sift through all that.
It is really difficult. And, one of the discussions that we had at COP26 was around greenwashing, and this idea that businesses are claiming to be doing all of the right things and having ticks in the boxes and showing up at the relevant events to make it look like they're doing what they should be doing, where the reality can be quite different. So I would say that people just need to be really informed and do your research and dig deep, because there are a lot of organisations out there who totally get this and understand the value of making changes. And there's some organisations that aren't so responsible and that aren't doing the things that they should be doing.
Do you think that having more sort of government involvement and legislation, do you think that can be a positive, or do you think that it's going to create a system where particularly small and medium businesses are more penalized, or they don't have the flexibility that a larger business would have? Do you think that there's a balance there that the government could set up to make sure that it actually can happen, that businesses actually can meet those targets?
Yes, definitely. I think that large organisations that have whole departments that are able to look at these issues and have all the resources to make the changes are in a stronger position than SMEs. But what we need and what we're working towards in Cumbria is a framework for SMEs to be able to operate within. So an opportunity to share best practice, to gain access to expertise. And the other thing that might be required is like grants and loans from the government to enable people to make changes. If there's opportunities to gain grants for large pieces of capital equipment that will make a site much more energy efficient, then that would really help to make some changes in the biggest areas of energy consumption.
We're going to take one more break, and sort of look to different policies and how we empower young people, but how we empower employees as well. Jayne, I'm very much enjoying this conversation. I'm looking forward to our next little bit. So we do talk a lot about individual responsibilities and different changes that we can make as individuals. So can you highlight what you think are sort of the top things that we can do individually to make those little changes?
Yeah, so one of the presentations at COP26 was around the 4 areas of your life that your carbon footprint sits within, and they're roughly 4 equal areas of food, travel, home, and other things, which includes leisure and other types of shopping. So it's about making responsible decisions when you're operating in those areas. At home, it's obviously a lot about energy, food. Try to buy locally sourced products. Reduce food miles. Eat food within season. So do you really need to be eating fruit that's been flown over from Israel or somewhere? When the products that you can source in the UK at certain times of the year. So it's making more responsible decisions when you're shopping, and also look at like recycling clothes or buying vintage clothes rather than buying new all the time, or investing in less things generally, buying less things, and repair things. So we live in very much a throwaway culture at the moment, whereas going back in time, things had more value when were repaired. So now you would just throw something in a skip and go away and buy a new one. We've also got this crisis on the high street, with shops closing down and the death of the high street. And if we could encourage people to repair more and fix things, there might be an opportunity to redevelop some of the high street and have a culture where we value items more and repair them.
Well, Ulverston at one point had a repair cafe, which I thought was brilliant. And because of COVID, everything sort of got paused. So hopefully we can get more of those sort of things in the areas that are sort of local villages and towns. One of the things that I noticed on the Oxley page was a no harm policy, zero harm policy. And I was wondering, do you see health and safety and environmental targets? Are they combined together? And if I were an employee and I thought I had a good idea, or I saw something, I was like, well, this really needs to change. Can we empower those people as well?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely health and safety and environmental are very closely tied together. And the other thing I think is all around social value. And we all have a commitment to the communities that we operate in. And we really need to look at whole community solutions. There's been some discussions where if a factory is producing a lot of heat, is there a way to develop a heat exchange where that heat can then power a local leisure centre or something like that? So, but it needs to really whole community thinking, not just isolated set of activity. And we absolutely empower our employees to come and tell us their ideas through our green team, through our communications team, through our suggestion boxes. That we want to understand from our team and from our community what things we need to change and how we can operate better, because we appreciate the opportunity that of reduced cost and being more productive and also to saving the planet.
Well, I love what you said about community, because we tend to sort of separate it out between individual and business and government, and the idea that we're actually talking about our community. Sort of sort of small, but we sort of build up between, you know, places like Ulverston, places like, I mean, even Dalton, it's a small town, but at the same time, there's these opportunities and that all these different groups can work together. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jayne. I'm looking forward to learning more about how you're going to be working with young people on these topics. So hopefully in the future, we can have an update. Thank you for your time and for a very interesting discussion.
Thank you.